Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name's Jill Davey, and this is our True North Insight channel where we share. This is a drop-in practice tonight, and you may be listening on Dharma Seed or watching on YouTube, and there's others of us here in the Zoom. So welcome whenever you are joining. Thanks for being here. So for context of the theme, the topic of the Dharma, the teachings, the practice that we're sharing tonight, I'll just give a context of why this is resonating for me right now. I'm in a few groups, reading books, learning, unpacking my my own white privilege and supremacy, and whiteness is part of that, big part of it, and also class and all those infinite variables. And one of the groups is called Me and White Supremacy, and it's a well, I'm in two of those groups, and another group that's being offered through Spirit Rock is called the Dharma of Being Anti-Racist, and it's another long and weekly and quite intense exploration and teaching and moving towards this dismantling of these inequities. One of the things that is commonly arising for us as participants that are doing this, some of the groups are mixed race groups and some are white affinity groups. And a really often arising theme is shame. And so I wanted to talk about shame and what the Buddha, what the Dharma says about shame. I was also reading an article from a book called Minor Feelings, an Asian American Reckoning by Kathy Park Hong. And for those who are here in the Zoom call, I'll just pop that into the chat as well. And if you're watching later on YouTube, that will be linked down below of the YouTube video. So the chapter is called The End of White Innocence, and it's from a book called Minor Feelings, an Asian American Reckoning. And this chapter, she makes some, it's a wonderfully written, very, I learned a lot just from this one chapter that I read, and there's more. I'll be doing more of that. But she talks about, this author talks about shame, among many other things, and describes it, this, I don't know, I guess I'm a visual learner or something, but it's so visceral, the terms that she uses to describe shame. One of them, she talks about, the dog cone of shame, which we, if you've had a dog who's ever had a injury or whatever, or I think they put them on cats too, and they put these cones around their neck so they don't keep biting at their wound or whatever when they're healing. And the animals always seem to, maybe we project this on them, feel like so upset and so dejected to have this cone of shame, as it's referred to, on their heads. She also refers to it as the urinal cake of shame. It's just so visceral. These images are just so, like, there's a disgust with it, which is intentional. But the one that stood out for me, she referred to it as a sharp, prickling awareness that I am exposed like the inflamed ass of a baboon. And it's like, this is something that particularly white shame is disempowers us from participating, from speaking up, from responding to the injustices in the world, because we're afraid and ashamed because of our privilege and our participation in this system of power imbalance. And shame is something that is really getting in the way of us growing as a world, as global beings. It's stopping us from speaking up and acting skillfully. It's very painful. Shame is a painful emotion, and it debilitates. It contracts us. It demobilizes us, stops us from mobilizing and responding. And I was also reflecting on this because today in Canada is what's called a day of listening to Indigenous voices. It's 12 hours of Indigenous on most of the major radio stations, Indigenous peoples of colonially what is called Canada, Turtle Island, speaking about their experience of the residential schools and the generations of trauma, among other things, of how we've treated our Indigenous peoples of this land. And some of us were sharing the Zoom before about the shame that we can feel in association with our ancestry and our connection and our present day reality of what land are we living on, what the impacts of this reality. And when we think about, feel, reflect on shame, if you think about it, you for me, it's very visceral, and maybe it is for you. When I think about this word shame, it's imploding. My chest moves back, my shoulders round forward, my head goes forward, and I feel like smaller, contracted, heavier. The heart collapses, and it becomes about me. Me. It just creates more, like, shame is kind of a self-feeding energy that implodes our hearts. And the Buddha taught about another aspect that is related to, sometimes it's called shame, but shame in as we understand it has this negative connotation that is not skillful and not helpful, and is demobilizes us. And whereas the Buddha taught about what is called hiri-ottappa. Hiri-ottappa, I'll just pop it into the chat here for those who are in the Zoom, is what we're going to talk about tonight. So hiri-ottappa, you might not recognize those words because it's Pali, which is the language the teachings of the Buddha were first written down in. And this term, which I'll explain in a moment, is what's referred to as the guardians of the world. Isn't that so beautiful? The guardians of the world. When we can really feel how much that is needed. And and we were talking in the Zoom before the recording, of so many vulnerable beings that need protection, the earth itself, the children that have been abused in our foster care system and are in the process of class action lawsuits and that redress, racially, culturally, all the systems of oppression, that what is needed is guardians, the guardians of the world. And the Buddha said that these two qualities, hiri-ottappa, are the guardians of the world. And even further to that, Bhikkhu Bodhi says that these two qualities sustain the entire efficacy of the Buddha's liberating path. That's a huge statement. These two qualities sustain the entire effectiveness of the Buddha's liberating path as the safeguards of personal decency. They at the same time preserve the dignity of the human race. So let's talk about what these are. So important, obviously. Yeah. So this first part of the word hiri, which is, if you're not able to access the chat, is spelled H-I-R-I in Pali. And hiri is this innate sense of what is sometimes referred to as shame, but as I've explained in the beginning, shame is not a helpful word. It contracts us and creates more story of myself. It's an innate sense of regret and remorse over a moral transgression. So as you may know, we have ethics is the first part of the path. Our ethic, moral values and intentions of how we are creating safety for ourselves and for each other in the world. And hiri is this inner sense that we all have, that when we proliferate it, it can turn into shame, but it's actually a very skillful part of the path when we don't make it into more of a story about myself, is the regret and remorse when we've caused harm. This is so important for all of us to look at. All of us have caused harm, and maybe still are causing harm in many ways, seen and unseen, known and unknown. Interpersonally, harming ourselves with our words, actions, thoughts, harming others in our greed, hatred, and delusion, and consumption, and etc. And so it's very important and skillful to actually feel regret and remorse over the understanding that we have caused harm. The other part of these two very important qualities is ottappa. This is spelled O-T-T-A-P-P-A in Pali. And it's this is called dread. It's the fear, dread of the results of wrongdoing. And so hiri is like kind of turning inward, but without imploding. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry that was harmful. I have so much regret. I can see the connection of, even though that might not have been my intention, the impact of my thoughts, words, actions have caused harm. And then ottappa is the dread, is like, I don't want to cause harm in the future. I I have a strong intention and values ethics that I really would intend deeply on this path to minimize any future harm as much as possible. And so these are called, well, I won't say the Pali, but they're called the bright guardians of the world. Isn't it? That's just so different than our experience, particularly in our white fear, white silence, what's called fragility, even though we're not that fragile, is this imploding and silencing and not participating because we're afraid to get it wrong. We're not going to say the right thing. We're not going to do the right thing. And so we're not in the game in changing this world. And so we contract in and we're silent. And the Buddha is calling these qualities hiri-ottappa, the bright guardians of the world. You see how open that is. When we feel and are practicing with these qualities skillfully, the heart opens and connects with each other, with all beings. You can feel shame contracts and withdraws, and this skillfulness, regret, remorse, and the dread or fear, worry of causing harm, awareness of having caused harm, concern to not cause harm, opens the heart, connects us with the world, brightens our mindfulness and awareness and our values, so that we're really more intentional. And when we cause harm, we offer amends when possible, ask forgiveness, and reconciliation. So Hiri, this internal reference, is rooted in self-respect. Self-respect. These are Bhikkhu Bodhi's words, and it induces us to move away from wrongdoing out of a feeling of personal honor. And again, this is like in the middle path to awakening starts with the ethical foundation of right speech, right thought, right intention, right action. Personal honor, self-respect. And ottappa, this fear of wrongdoing, has this external orientation, and it is the voice of conscience. By understanding and seeing deeply that the connection to our freedom from suffering and the freedom from suffering of all beings. None of us is free till all of us are free. All right. This is from Acharya Buddhaghosa. This would have been in the Vishuddhimagga. Well, anyways, doesn't matter, from the Vishuddhimagga. And here's a very visceral, strong image. It's helpful for me, these kind of things. Hopefully it's not upsetting for you. Buddhaghosa, Acharya Buddhaghosa illustrates the difference between the two of these, hiri and ottappa, with this simile of an iron rod. So you can picture an iron rod, and one end of it is smeared with excrement, and the other end is heated to a glowing hot metal, when a metal rod is put in the fire. And so hiri is like one's disgust at the thought of grabbing the end that's smeared in excrement. And ottappa is the fear of grabbing it in the place where it's red hot. It's kind of a gruesome image, so apologies for that. And it can also wake us up to see like, oh, I don't want to touch that. Okay. Well, what's going on in this heart and mind that I don't want to be fueling those kind of behaviors and thoughts. And then the fear of touching the red hot end. I don't want to cause that kind of harm. I will burn myself with, another simile is where you pick up hot burning coals to throw at someone out of hatred. And obviously that's burning yourself. All right, I should wind it up here. There's lots. Let me just see. And so our path is also described by the Buddha as going against the stream. And we can see this in our world where we're talking about humanity through time, humanity globally, and what's the reality of what's happening. This stream, the momentum of greed, hatred, and delusion, and that this path is called going against the stream, against the habits of me and mine and not yours, and getting what we can, taking what we want, and not seeing clearly the truth of things. So this requires a lot of inner work, a lot of truth telling, a lot of Sangha community that's willing to be honest, speak truthfully of our experiences, hear our ancestors and their experiences, and to use this to spur us into speaking up, acting, not imploding with shame. The Buddha asserted that whatever evil arises springs from a lack of hiri and ottappa, from not having regret, remorse, and fear and dread. That all evil arises from a lack of these two qualities. That's pretty powerful. And all virtuous deeds spring from these two qualities. Wow. So important reflections about the difference between these, and cultivating, really allowing ourselves to feel regret because we have caused harm, and then to use that fuel, that inspiration, that remorse to respond, to connect, to reach out, to offer support. There's many, many infinite ways. Okay. So let's bring this into the heart and body, still the heart and mind from these stirring thoughts, and cultivate some calm, heartfulness, skillfulness in our practice now. So getting yourself comfortable for some time of meditation and practice here. And I might just give a heads up because it's related, and I would have maybe gone into it, but I'm not going to go into it tonight. But next week is called Global Forgiveness Day on my calendar. Global Forgiveness Day. So next week, we'll probably talk about the forgiveness practices and offer a forgiveness practice, which is, of course, related to what we've been talking about tonight. Okay. Coming into stillness, whether that's laying down or sitting or standing. You could also do walking meditation if that's what your body is needing. Yeah, so our Zoom conversation before the recording was really deeply heart-touching, a lot of grief. And so as we're coming into stillness, you might find it helpful to really check in, what do you need right now? You might need to lay down. You might need a hand on the heart. You might need eyes open and looking out a window or at something beautiful in your environment. So really another beautiful way to soothe our broken hearts. We are all brokenhearted, is to hold your face in your hands or one hand. It can be a really gentle, soothing touch that I find helpful. Really feeling into what's touched in your heart and body. And is your body, your energy, your heart feeling contracted because of the conversation and the harms that were named? Just see what is the sensation in the body right now? And there may be a sense of numbness or disconnect. Just knowing that, if that's what's showing up for you, not judging it, not needing to change anything, just checking in. How are you? You may feel a sense of overwhelm or heaviness, or the heart may be touched. The Buddha referred to compassion as the quivering of the heart in response to the suffering of the world. So you might feel that sensation of kind of the heart beating, the heart touched, the heart responding. And then see what is skillful and helpful for you in this moment to give some spaciousness to this broken heart. So that might come from having your eyes open or feeling the ground beneath your seat and your feet, that contact, that pressure, the earth supporting you, holding you. It may be helpful to connect to this sense of space just in your room that you're in. Either looking at or feeling the space behind, in front, either side, above. Just giving some actual sensation of spaciousness around what can feel like a contraction. So I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes here, and the invitation is for all of us to see what way do we need to attend to what's arisen for us tonight. Some gentle, spacious, or grounding attention. And then maybe a few deeper breaths if you feel yourself holding your breath or holding tension. And now we'll begin to invite in and cultivate these very skillful and important qualities that the Buddha taught. Hiri-ottappa. And so this first quality, hiri, this internal innate sense that we all have of regret for the harms we've caused. With our thoughts, our words, our actions. And to be really skillful, to not turn this into self-blame and shame. This is not helpful. Hiri comes from this feeling of personal honor and self-respect. See if you can connect with that. Perhaps reflecting on your values, your ethics, your intentions. And some of us practice with these intentions. We undertake the training to refrain from causing harm, by taking what isn't freely given, not to undertake the training to not take what isn't freely given. We undertake the training to refrain from causing harm with our words, our speech. We undertake the training to refrain from causing harm with our sensuality, sexuality. We undertake the training to refrain from causing harm through heedlessness of being intoxicated and not thinking and acting clearly and skillfully. And then in this next few minutes of silence, you could feel into these intentions or add your own words, your own values that you live by, your own inner moral compass. As you connect with this sense of hiri, what does that feel like in the body? What is the sensation? Do you feel this quivering of the heart, some warmth or connection in the heart or belly, whatever is showing up for you? And does it feel different than shame and blame? And then we use this heart energy to connect to this other factor, ottappa, the fear and dread of harmful actions in the future. This is our interconnected awareness, and this the voice of our conscience. This may just be a felt sense for you of our interconnectedness, our deep intention to not cause harm, or it may resonate for you with some words. What does it feel like to be a bright guardian of the world? That's okay if you're noticing a shrinking back from that. Just notice, just notice. Then recall your intention, your hiri, and see if it motivates some sense of connection. Who is it in your circle, in your community, your capacity that you can be a guardian for? It could be the earth, the animals, plants, trees, the waters. Could be animal companions, and it could be family, friends, wider community, infinite possibilities. Who can you be a guardian for? And in these last few minutes of the practice, float in the possibility and see what arises for you of perhaps an intention, an action, some way that you could respond. Something small, possible, actionable, realistic. Perhaps something you could do this week. And in a moment, as I ring the bell, allow these three sounds to vibrate and resonate, perhaps touching the quivering heart and rippling out into our interconnectedness. May this Dharma serve the highest good for all beings. And may all beings be liberated from our contractions of self and open our hearts into our interconnectedness. A reminder here of Bhikkhu Bodhi's words that these two qualities sustain the entire efficacy of the Buddha's liberating path, as they are safeguards of personal decency. They at the same time preserve the dignity of the human race. Thank you for joining us. If you've joined on one of the other platforms, and please check the links down below for the links to native land map that you can, and the Downey Wenjack Day to Listen recordings, and Kathy Park Hong's website and book, and other stuff will be there. Thank you.